It always starts with a light, a flicker beyond the ridge, a strange glow in the far sky that holds, just for a moment, and then is gone. People look up, and the story begins again. The early wave of modern UFO sightings didn't start in laboratories or war rooms. They began in places where the Earth met sky. Quiet roads, mountain trails, airfields. Ordinary people with no desire to be caught in mystery reported seeing something they couldn't name. That was all it took. By the mid-20th century, society was changing. Aircraft had become familiar. Jets tore lines across the sky. But still, there were moments that didn't make sense. Shapes moving in ways that defied gravity. Lights that paused without sound. Silhouettes that blinked out before they could be followed. And as soon as someone told someone else, the story grew. Newsreels and newspapers spread the accounts quickly. Local reports would spiral across borders. A pilot in Argentina, a shepherd in the French Alps, a group of fishermen off the coast of Japan. Different people, different languages, but always the same themes. Silent lights, perfect movements, no visible source of propulsion, no explanation. It was never just what they saw. It was how similar the stories were across continents. Some wondered if the sightings were simply misinterpretations. Stars magnified by atmospheric distortion, distant planes mistaken for craft, or natural phenomena not yet understood. But others saw the patterns and reached for meaning. The Cold War cast a long psychological shadow. Paranoia was ambient. Technology was booming. Nuclear fear simmered beneath daily life. People looked up not just in curiosity, but in anxiety. The sky had become a stage for human tension, and those lights, whatever they were, reflected it back. But the real fuel was culture. Books, radio dramas, pulp magazines with silver ships and alien eyes. As early science fiction crept into the public imagination, the idea of intelligent visitors from the stars began to take root, not as a threat at first, but as something transcendent, perhaps even saviors. In a fractured world, the possibility of a more advanced intelligence watching us became comforting. And so the myth solidified, not with proof, but with repetition. The sightings grew. So did the interpretations. Some said they were time travelers, others ancient beings from under the sea. In parts of Brazil, sightings were tied to sky spirits long rumored in indigenous legends. In Australia, elders pointed to stories that had been told for centuries. Star people who walked among the rocks and vanished when challenged. What began as light became symbol, and symbols, unlike evidence, don't require confirmation. They live on repetition, not resolution. And that's the strange part, the part no one ever quite admits. For all the thousands of accounts across the world, not a single one has produced something undeniable. No fragments, no parts, no landing. Always the same, just out of reach. The phenomenon never evolves. It adapts in shape and setting, but never steps into clarity. It waits, just beyond the frame. Some take this as proof of deception. Others take it as a sign that the truth is not meant for us. And still others begin to wonder if the truth lies in the act of believing itself. The first lights in the sky didn't need to be real to matter. They only needed to reflect something we already carried inside. We once believed the camera would end the mystery. When every person on the planet began carrying a lens in their pocket, it felt inevitable. The age of uncertainty would die under the weight of megapixels. If the truth was out there, surely it would be caught by now, captured cleanly, frame by frame. But it wasn't. And it never has been. Instead, the mystery multiplied. From the late 80s through the early 2000s, consumer camcorders opened a new frontier. What had once required a television crew or a radio interview could now be documented by anyone, and they did. Blurry shapes over cities, darting lights over lakes, sudden stops, impossible angles. Each grainy clip became a new glyph in the growing visual language of the unexplained. Nowhere was this more dramatic than in mass sightings. Events like the V formation lights seen over large cities, captured on dozens of different cameras from different angles. It should have been decisive, but it wasn't, because the cameras disagreed. Some showed a single object. Others revealed independent lights drifting in formation. Some zoomed in to pixelated halos. Others caught nothing at all. The only thing they confirmed was that people were convinced they'd seen something. But the more footage emerged, the less clarity we had. Then came the internet. The rise of video sharing platforms turned every clip into a potential headline. Incredible footage of real UFO. They're watching us, captured live. But the footage was never what the titles promised. Lights without reference points. Objects that could be birds, drones, or digital fakes. And the hoaxes, they got better. By the 2010s, anyone with basic editing software could craft a sighting, add a glow, blur the edges, insert a reaction. Some hoaxers became famous. Others created entire subcultures, role-playing long narratives of alien contact and leaked footage with high production value. They weren't always malicious. Some called it performance art, but the damage was the same. Trust eroded. The more footage we had, the less any of it mattered. Because it wasn't just the clips that were being analyzed. It was the people behind them. Every uploader was scrutinized. Every background checked. Were they credible? Were they chasing likes? Were they acting? Even genuine sightings, ones filmed by people with nothing to gain, got buried under the noise. Buried under parodies, reaction videos, and deep fakes. The same tools that should have brought us closer to the truth became the fog we wandered through. And yet, the videos kept coming. One by one, night after night. Bright orbs, silent discs, floating triangles. Sometimes they flickered in place. Other times they seemed to race across the stars. Always too far, always too fast, always cut off before something decisive happened. The camera was supposed to solve the mystery. Instead, it revealed just how easy it is to capture the unknown, and how impossible it is to confirm it. People began to document not for evidence, but for belonging. Recording became ritual. Uploading became confession. Every video said the same thing, in different words. I saw something. Tell me I'm not alone. And so, the platforms filled. With wonder, with hoax, with confusion. No longer a search for truth, but an ecosystem, self-sustaining, self-reinforcing. In the absence of proof, the spectacle was enough. The mystery didn't die in the lens. It grew. Because the camera didn't bring us answers. It just gave us more angles on the same questions. There's a point when belief no longer feels like curiosity, but choreography. You think you're chasing the truth, but the trail never ends. The closer you get, the more it twists. Not because you're wrong, but because the path was meant to twist. Not to reveal anything, but to keep you walking. The UFO phenomenon isn't just a collection of sightings. It's an architecture, a structure of symbols, leaks, and contradictions designed not to confirm or deny, but to maintain attention, a sustained state of ambiguity. And the deeper you go, the more it starts to feel intentional. Not by aliens, but by people. Somewhere along the way, the story stopped being about what's up in the sky and became about who controls the conversation. Media platforms, influencers, pseudo-experts, content farms. They don't want resolution. They want engagement. And uncertainty is the most addictive form of content there is, because certainty is a closed door. But mystery, that's a hallway. And people walk it for years. Entire channels and networks have built empires on almost proof, almost confirmed, titles that promise revelation, thumbnails that scream disclosure. But once you click in, you find speculation wrapped in speculation, a collage of second-hand accounts, altered timelines, misquoted interviews. The longer you stay, the more invested you become. And that's the trick. Because when belief becomes identity, doubt becomes betrayal. People don't just want to be told the truth. They want their truth reinforced. And if the truth is blurry enough, anyone can see what they want to see in it. There are entire industries now built on this, not to disprove or debunk, but to sustain. Channels that tease secret technologies, podcasts that hint at ancient truths buried under Antarctica, personalities who claim to have insider knowledge from unnamed sources, always just enough detail to sound credible, never enough to be verifiable. And in this climate, skepticism isn't profitable. Ambiguity is. That ambiguity becomes a kind of theater, a shadow play of flickering footage and ominous music. Every week a new leak, every week a new expert panel, all built to keep you circling, questioning, watching, but rarely concluding. And the longer the mystery survives, the more it benefits those who peddle it, not as a lie, but as a product, a lifestyle, a subscription, because people want to believe, and belief is easier to sell than truth. The danger is this: the longer the myth is sustained without evidence, the more it reshapes how we process all information. Not just about UFOs, but about everything. Trust fractures, logic bends, critical thinking gives way to tribalism. And in the end, the mystery becomes less about what's real and more about who owns the narrative. This isn't just a cultural phenomenon anymore. It's a business, and the product is suspicion. Not proof that something's out there, just the feeling that someone knows something and isn't telling you. That suspicion has gravity. It pulls people in, but it doesn't lead upward. It leads inward, to a place where nothing can be verified, but everything can be believed. Long before they were flying saucers, they were something else: sky gods, star beings, light visitors, shapes that descended in myth and vanished in legend. Every culture has its version, not always machines, often spirits, messengers, ancestors, but always from above, always coming down from the sky, saying little, leaving less, and disappearing before we could ask more. That's the thing about these stories. They're not new. What changed wasn't the phenomenon. What changed was us. In an age of science, we needed a modern vocabulary for old feelings. The sacred was replaced by the extraterrestrial. Prayers gave way to sightings. The burning bush became the burning disk, and belief adapted. Not because we're gullible, but because we're hungry. We live in an era where most people feel like data points, tracked, sorted, fed algorithms, drained of myth. And in that vacuum, the UFO became something sacred again. Not religious, but deeply spiritual. Not all who believe in visitors are chasing aliens. Some are chasing meaning, connection, a sign that someone is watching who isn't watching to sell them something. For many, the idea that another civilization is aware of us, observing us from the dark, feels better than the alternative, that no one is watching, and no one ever will. And so belief becomes survival. Not physical, but psychological. A buoy in a sea of noise. A quiet hope that the universe is not empty after all. It's why people gather at watch points, why communities form online, sharing infrared screenshots and eerie dreams. It's why strangers in diners lean in, whispering about lights they saw years ago and never forgot. Not because they need to be right, but because they need to not be alone. Some call it delusion, but that misses the point. This isn't about science, it's about significance. The sightings become part of identity, the rituals, sky watching, document collecting, podcast listening become modern sacraments, a way of finding order in a world that often feels indifferent. But belief cuts both ways. For every person uplifted by the idea, there's someone drawn deeper into shadows, where every contrail is a message, every power outage is a warning, every stranger in a dark suit is a threat. The line between comfort and paranoia is thin, and once crossed, it's hard to return. Still, the phenomenon persists, not because it has to, because we need it to. There's a strange beauty in that, a stubborn poetry. In a world starved for wonder, even an unexplained light in the sky can feel like a gift. And maybe that's the final transformation, the UFO as mirror. It shows us what we lack, what we hope for, what we fear. It doesn't have to be real in the empirical sense. It only has to be real enough to believe in. Because sometimes belief isn't a weakness, it's a survival instinct. And so we return to the quiet. After all the lights, all the videos, all the testimonies and theories and whispers and websites, there is still no proof. Not the kind that stops debate. Not the kind that draws a line through the noise and says, "Here, this is it." The phenomenon endures, but the evidence never arrives. Not once has something landed and stayed. Not once has anyone placed a piece of unknown material on a table and said, "This is not from here," and had that claim stand up under real scrutiny. We've had stories, we've had lights, we've had belief in every shape it can take, but we have never had the thing itself. And maybe that's the point, because this has always been a ghost story wearing the clothes of science. A myth in disguise, one that evolves just enough to survive, but never enough to resolve. There was a time when people thought technology would change everything, that once we had the right cameras, the right sensors, the right platforms, the truth would reveal itself. Instead, all we revealed was ourselves. We showed how deeply we want to be part of something bigger, how easily we fill silence with meaning, how quickly uncertainty becomes narrative, and how, over time, even the absence of evidence begins to feel sacred, as if the emptiness itself is trying to tell us something. There's a strange gravity to that. Somewhere along the line, the search for proof stopped being about discovery and became a ritual. People chase the mystery not to end it, but to stay close to it, to walk its edge, to feel its shape without ever needing to see it whole. There's comfort in that, oddly enough, in the not knowing. Because knowing would mean confronting whatever truth actually lies at the bottom of all this. Whether it's loneliness, or indifference, or just a long string of coincidences in a sky we never fully understood. The most honest answer may be the hardest one. There is no proof because there is nothing to prove. And if that's true, then all of this, the sightings, the signals, the sky watching and forums and lights and orbs, is not a record of contact. It's a record of longing. A record of people looking up and saying, "Please, let there be more than this." And maybe that's enough. Maybe the mystery serves us in ways truth never could. Maybe the lights in the sky are worth chasing, not because they're real, but because they keep us reaching. Still the silence lingers. Still nothing lands. Still the proof never comes.